In Chapter 10, there's 4 different types of conic sections, one of which is the parabola. So to find the focus and directrix, what you want to do is draw a sketch of this. So this parabola will be opening down, since it's y equals, it'll be on the y-axis, and it'll be open down because this a is negative. So I'm going to open down. So remember, the focal point is always inside the parabola, and the directrix is always on the opposite side. So the distance between the vertex, so the vertex is at 0, 0, and the directrix is c, and the distance between the vertex and the focal point is c. So to figure out the c, you need to do the relationship a equals 1 over 4c. So in this case, a is negative 4. So solving for c, multiply both sides by 4c will give us negative 16c equals 1. So dividing both sides by negative 16, c is negative 1/16. So the focal point will be the ordered pair 0, negative 1/16, because it's on the y-axis. And your equation for your horizontal line will be y equals 1/16. It'll be positive 1/16 because this distance is positive, it's above it. Write an equation for the parabola with the vertex at the origin. The focus is at 6, 0. So again, I would draw a sketch. So a sketch of this would be if the focal point's right here, the parabola must be going to the right. In this case, if it goes to the right or to the left, the equation is going to be x equals ay squared. So to find my a, I'm going to use the formula a equals 1 over 4c. So c is the distance between the focal point and the vertex, so the c is 6. So this is going to give me x equals 1 over 24, because I multiplied 4 times 6, y squared. And it's positive because this parabola is going to the right. And then write an equation for a circle with a center at 9, 3. So this is your h, this is your k, and your radius is 5. So the formula is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Substituting my h and my k gives me x minus 9 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 5 squared, which is 25. So there's my equation of the circle. And then work backwards, find the radius, or find the center and radius. So the center here is going to be 6, negative 3. And the radius is the square root of 9, which is 3. And then number 19, identify the vertices and co-vertices of the ellipse and the foci. So there's no graph on here, but so this ellipse is stretched out on the x-axis. I know that because underneath the x is greater. So I'm going to draw a sketch of this first. So if underneath the x squared is 25, that means it's going left and right 5. And then on the vertical axis, it's going up and down 3. So here's my ellipse. So the vertices are going to be on the x-axis, that's the major axis. The vertices are going to be at positive, negative 5, 0. And the co-vertices are going to be on the y-axis at 0, plus or minus 3. The focal points, the foci, an ellipse has 2 foci, and it's on the interior and on the major axis of the ellipse. So the formula to find the foci for an ellipse is c squared equals a squared minus b squared. So a squared minus b squared are the vertices squared minus the co-vertices, because you can never have a negative number here. So this is going to be c squared equals 5 squared, which is 25, minus 9, so c squared equals 16. So c equals 4. So keep in mind that your horizontal axis is the major axis, so your foci will be on the x-axis, which will make the foci will have ordered pairs plus or minus 4, 0. To find the domain and range, it's simpler from the graph. So domain is all the x values. You're going left and right from negative 5 to 5 and including it. So you can either write it as an inequality, such as this, or you can write it as interval notation, -5 to 5. The range, it's going up and down, -3 to 3. So you could write it as an inequality. So -3 is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to +3. Or you can write it in interval notation. So remember, in interval notation, these brackets mean it's including the endpoint, which it is. Okay, write an equation for ellipse with the foci at ±3, 0, and co-vertices at 0, ±2. So a common mistake is people just to automatically write the equation x squared plus y squared. Your co-vertices are going to be underneath the y-axis. And then they put 9 for the foci, or 9 for the vertices right here. But this is the foci. So again, you have to use the formula c squared equals a squared minus b squared. So it's foci squared, so that will be 3 squared, which is 9, equals vertices minus co-vertices. So vertices we don't know. We don't know what that a squared is. But we know the co-vertices are at ±2, so I'm going to subtract 4. So adding 4 to each side will give me 13. I don't need to take the square root of that and then square it again because underneath here is already squared. So there's my equation. And it makes sense because the foci are on the x-axis and the x is the greater number. Graph the hyperbola and label the asymptotes. So the difference between a hyperbola and an ellipse with the equation is a hyperbola will have a subtraction sign and ellipse will have an addition sign in standard form. So first I want to find the asymptotes. So the asymptotes are going to be at y equals, because all asymptotes are oblique for hyperbolas. So y equals plus or minus the square root of what's underneath the y, so that's going to be 3, over the square root of what's underneath the x, which is going to be 2. And then you always need to have an x right here because it's an oblique line. So this represents the slope of the line. So I did y over x. It's always going to be y over x, no matter if the transverse axis is horizontal, which is the horizontal in this case, or vertical. So I can tell in this case the transverse axis is horizontal because it goes x squared minus y squared. If it was y squared minus x squared, it would be vertical. So this would be y squared minus x squared. So I'm going to graph these two asymptotes. So I go up 3, right 2, left 2, down 3, like this. This is one asymptote. The other asymptote is going to be a -3/2, which looks like this, both going through the origin. And then I also want to graph my vertices. So my vertices are going to be on the x-axis because that's what's leading. It doesn't have to do with the numbers on the which are greater on the bottom like an ellipse does. A hyperbola matters which one's leading. So underneath here is a 2, -2 right here. So those are on my x-axis because it's going the horizontal. It's a horizontal transverse axis. So to figure out another point, what you want to do is plug in a number that's at least or greater than 2 or less than -2. So I'm going to plug in 3 for x, and I'm going to solve for y. So I'm going to find the ordered pair 3 and solve for y. In doing that, once I get one of these points, I can use symmetry to get the other points. So this is going to be 9/4 minus y squared over 9 equals 1. I'm going to subtract 9/4 from each side. And after that, I'm going to multiply. So I'd kind of do this on my calculator. So I have -y squared over 9 equals 1 minus 9/4. That's a fourth, not a y. And then I multiply both sides by -9. And then after that, I have y squared, I take the square root. So I take the square root of all of this in my calculator. So in my calculator, I do 1 minus 9/4, and that gives me -1.25. Then I multiply that number by -9, which gives me 11.25. And then I take the square root of that number, which is about 3.35. So I'll put about 3.4. So this is 3.4, and I approximated. So I can go right 3 up 3.34. So I go right 3 up 3.34, and I use symmetry to get the rest of the points. So I go down 3.34 like this, -3 up 3.34, -3 down 3.34. Okay, now I need to also find the foci. So the formula to find the foci is going to be c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So adding 4 plus 9 is 13. So the foci are on the horizontal or the transverse axis, which is horizontal. So the foci will be at plus or minus root 13, 0. In the domain on a hyperbola, look at the blue graph. So the domain is going infinitely to the left. So that means that you could write it as an inequality. X is less than or equal to -2. And x is greater than or equal to 2. But for my range is going to be all real numbers because it's going up and down infinitely. Now, if I want to write an interval notation, I'll do the interval notation down here because a lot of us had trouble on the quiz for it. So interval notation, you want to start from the least number that includes on the graph, which is -infinity. So it's going -infinity. Infinity, remember, negative infinity always uses parentheses. And it's going all the way to -2 and including -2. In union with, it doesn't pick up again until 2 and it stops at infinity. So double check your answer that these numbers are going from least to greatest. So in other words, you shouldn't have -2 come before -infinity.